Hey everyone, for all of you checking out, I don't say it often enough. Whether you're on YouTube, hit subscribe, like the videos if you like the content that we're putting out, the interviews, the commentary on everything. And if you're on Apple, leave a review. We actually haven't gotten a lot of reviews recently, so it really helps us out. I mean, everything about this show is completely organic. It's really just through you guys spreading the word. And letting people know that you like the show. So the way to do that really is leaving reviews, liking it. And a lot of people watch on YouTube, but don't hit that subscribe button. That's not what they usually do. So get in the habit of that. Just hit subscribe. And, that way on your account, you'll be alerted every time we have a new show up every Monday.
Yeah, guys, it helps, but I get it. I get on YouTube too and don't hit subscribe on the stuff. I mean, it's just something that's not habit forming. But yeah, think about it. Go ahead and hit subscribe if you want to leave a review.
Nothing to think about. I mean, it takes 2 seconds. So hit the subscribe button. We've told you right now. You got to do it.
Can you tell the difference between the personalities of Here with Media? And that's why it works, because it's like, do it. Like, if you want to, but it works, man. So the personalities work, and that's why you need to hit subscribe, because it's just a different podcast than what you probably heard before. So
yes, and actually, I was going to say with that Battle Line podcast, often imitated, never duplicated, and we really are at this point. I can say often imitated, because Chris came up with the name Battle Line, and Battle Line is not. It's not like a word. It's not a word in the dictionary. And suddenly, I'm not going to take any shots, but there are podcasts popping up here and there with people we know, very similar names. Yeah, little bit of inspiration, maybe.
Hey, whatever. If it inspires you and you're doing a good thing, then great. Then take it for what it's worth. But like the Battle Line, that name came up with me listening to 2 songs. I listened to a group called Pillar. Well, I don't know if you've heard of them before. They're a hard rock, but they're somewhat Christian. But they came out with a song called Frontline. And then I was listening, the next song was Five Finger Death Punch Battleborn. And the words, actually, if you listen to both of those lyrics, both those songs, it fits for me. I was like, man, those words fit. So listen to the words, but that's where Battle Line came from. It was from Frontline and Battleborn. So Pillar and Five Finger Death Punch, but the actual name, the word doesn't mean anything. It's the lyrics of those 2 songs that actually means something. So if you get a chance, listen, and they're both outstanding songs. For all of y'all that listen to the podcast, Five Finger Death Punch. If you haven't heard of Pillar, though, listen to Pillar. Pillar, they are more Christian, but they're like a POD Christian rock group.
POD is great.
That. Yeah, they're like that kind of rock, and their Frontline is a great song. Great fun. I'd love to have those guys on if we ever have, if anybody from Pillar ever listens. Love to have them.
We should look it up. Yeah, I I'll put that on my list of people to get on. We have had Chris Kell on when you weren't on, but like 5 minutes with him at SHOT Show. From Five Finger Death Punch. I do remember saying we got to get you on for a longer interview at some point, and we'll do it. But this week we got Brad Podliska on. Really excited for that. Hey, if you've been listening to the show for a while, then you know that we've been with Ned for years now. We've taken their CBD, and honestly, the number one concern I hear from people who don't take it is, hey, I'm in law enforcement, I'm in the military, I get drug tested, I can't take CBD. So for those people, they've found a solution for you in addition to their incredible CBD products. And that is their new sleep product that we'll get right into here. 70 million Americans have chronic sleep issues, and 50% of Americans deal with sleep deprivation. You've probably dealt with this at some point in your life, and we know how difficult it could be. So one of our favorite brands, Ned, has come up with their incredible new product, Shut Eye Chai. It's inspired by 5,000 years of ancient healing tradition, and it's Ned's biggest product launch to date. It's a mellow super blend latte for sleep that combines adaptogens, aminos, functional mushrooms, and magnesium. Seriously, the best ingredients out there, wrapped in a heavenly masala chai inspired spiced body. Think cinnamon, clove, ginger, all that good stuff. It's all natural, made exclusively from functional botanicals, fungi, herbs, plants, minerals, roots, and spices. And the big thing here, as always, third-party lab reports, but this does not contain CBD. It doesn't contain caffeine, melatonin, or dairy. So if you're one of those people who's like, hey, I want to support, I want to check out Ned, but I can't do the drug testing thing with CBD, check out the Shut Eye Chai.
It works well. No, it's great, and you do taste that cinnamon in it. It's got that spice in it, and you do taste the ginger. You taste the cloves. It's really good. And this time of year, being me being in the Midwest, you live up in the Northeast. It's cold. This is perfect time of the year to be drinking hot tea before you go to bed at night. And guys, it works tremendous. And again, it's that you do get that good. I like that cinnamon taste. I really do. I think it's tremendous. And if you can't do the CBD, which if you can take it, they have the best CBD on the market by far. It helps with inflammation, helps with IBS, inflammatory bowel syndrome, or inflammatory bowel disease. It definitely helps with ulcerative colitis. But if you can't, and you still need some help sleeping, take the Shadai Chai, and you'll like the taste. And you also like that you get a full night's sleep. So tremendous products. They do such a great job over there. They're an awesome company.
Absolutely. And their products keep us alert and able to do this, able to have great interviews with people like Brad Podliska. So check them out. Discover how Shadai Chai can revolutionize your sleep and get 15% off with the code BattleLine. Make sure you use our code, and that way you'll get a discount. HelloNed.com/BattleLine, or enter BattleLine at checkout. It supports the show and helps us out and keeps us going, keeps us putting out free content. So HelloNed.com/BattleLine to get 15% off. Sweet dreams.
From Omaha, Nebraska to New York City, from planet Earth to extraterrestrial life in space, a podcast with no equal, engaged in unconventional warfare through your speakers and headphones. This is a show about embracing the suck, conquering your demons, and finding God in the face of adversity. Chris Tonto Peranto.
Twitch is on. Motherfucker, I'm gonna shoot you in the face.
Ian Scotto.
Ian and I have been dating for a long time.
You are now tuned into the BattleLine podcast.
The Switch is on, BattleLine podcast. Brad Podliska on this episode, as I said earlier. Before we get to that, man, we've got a couple of military-related news stories that, I guess we'll get right into. Both positive, honestly, I would say. You know, unfortunately, with the way the news cycle is, most of the time it's negative, and I would say both of these, you guys will probably agree, are positive. So I'll start off with this. The headline, and this is the USA Today article: Russia releases American Taylor Dudley. Western tanks could be a game changer. That's a different headline there, but Taylor Dudley. So when I first saw this, I thought that it was going to be Paul Whelan, who's been in Russia, as we know, for many years now at this point. But this is a different military veteran. So an American and Navy veteran detained in Russia since April was released Thursday, his family said in a statement. Taylor Dudley, 35, was backpacking in Europe when he crossed the border from Poland into Russia and was taken into custody. On Thursday, he was released at the Polish border to former New Mexico Governor Bill Richardson and a representative of the U.S. Embassy in Warsaw. Family spokesman Jonathan Franks said in a statement. And when I read this, I'm like, I know Jonathan Franks. He did media for Montel when I booked him. But I think it's the same Jonathan Franks. So then it says here, the Richardson Center worked diligently and quietly for more than 6 months with significant assistance from the Steve Menzies Global Foundation, from Hostage US, and from the James Foley Foundation. The family will be forever grateful for their work. Richardson said in a statement that he continues to work for the release of Paul Whelan. As I mentioned, a former U.S. Marine detained in Russia 4 years ago. Whelan was convicted of espionage in 2020 and sentenced to 16 years in prison. So I wasn't aware of Taylor Dudley, to be honest, but I also was reading an article from CNN that was a little bit more in depth that I wouldn't have time to read on the air. But the family made it clear that they purposely kept this out of the media and wanted it to be done as behind the scenes as possible. And maybe that's why he was released way earlier than someone like Paul Whelan, that it wasn't a political football.
It wasn't a political, that's because it's used like that. And believe me, I've been through political footballs
Yes.
But it can be a detriment. It can be it can be a benefit at times, and it can also be a benefit, a detriment. And I think in this case, I think the family did the right thing by keeping it out, because you don't want to put egocentric, narcissistic politician maniacs on the spot by making it a political football, as you'd say it, or putting it out there, because then you're putting them in a hole that they've got to save face. It's just like anybody. If you and I are going to get in a fight, and people are watching, we're probably going to be more. There's going to be more bravado going on, more back and forth than if it was just me and you. And like, hey, dude, let's just work this out. Nobody's seeing it. We don't have to say face. And I think it's that way. That's just human nature, in my opinion. It's not like a political thing, even though there's more arrogant narcissists in politics than there are just in the general population, in my opinion. But I'm glad they did. Off that soapbox, I'm glad they got it taken care of, and that he's home. And I always tell people that are traveling overseas, this happened when we were in Kurdistan too. We had two hikers that the Iranians thought they were spies, and they weren't. They had nothing to do. We were working I was with the agency at the time, and they crossed over. They just you can't tell where those borders are, and they know. The locals know. The Iranians know. The Russians know. They know, but local populace don't, and especially tourists don't. And you just cross over a line, and they're going to snatch you up. They're watching you. They're seeing it. And so that's why I always tell people that are going overseas, especially if you're going to a country that's neighboring and not necessarily an ally to the United States, be wary of where you're walking. It's not like you can go to the Rocky Mountains and just walk around Colorado and meander into Wyoming and be okay. You cross over that line, they're going to see you. They're going to snatch you up, and they're going to keep you. So, enjoy your vacations when you go overseas, guys, but make sure you know where the hell you're going and what areas are unfriendly and what are friendly. And make sure you also do register with any U.S. State Department facility that you have in the neighboring allied countries, because they are the ones that are going to be alerted. And then, for God forbid you're taken captive, they do need to know, because they'll have at least a reason. Well, they were in this country. They're not part of us. They were just on vacation. And I always tell people that they're going overseas, make sure you get with the embassy or the U.S. State Department and let them know where you're going, so they have your alibi that you're not working for them. And that's my 2 cents. But other than that, I'm happy for the family, of course, that he's home. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, I hope the same happens for Paul Whelan. And I know with the whole Brittany Griner situation, like was discussed, why did we free Brittany Griner? Why didn't we free Paul Whelan? I know Brittany Griner's wife, when she was freed, made that statement that, we are going to work and try to get Paul Whelan free. So hopefully it does, because all of them should be freed. And at least from what we know, Paul Whelan wasn't doing anything wrong. From what we know, he wasn't a spy, but we don't really know enough, but either way, we'd like to see him back here. But one military veteran back here, and one, when I saw the CNN headline that a military veteran was being brought back to the U.S., I assumed Paul Whelan. But it's a reminder that there's a lot of stuff behind the scenes that we don't know about, and a lot of names that we've never heard of, that because it just doesn't get the press. Then the second article here, this is from Al, you're very familiar with, American Military News. Shout out to Kellen over there.
Kellen over there. Kellen. Yeah. How do you say his last? I always say it Guida, but he's not an Italian. I can't always pronounce it correct. Guida. Yeah. But I always say Guida. He's not Italian though, guys. Kellen's a good guy. I love Kellen.
So this was all over, but I picked up theirs. You know why? Because honestly, to make it like easily printable. I always talk about that, but I just wish more news outlets made things like easy to print. Anyway, Pentagon officially ends military COVID vax mandate. The Pentagon officially rescinded the military's COVID-19 vaccine mandate on Tuesday, according to a Department of Defense memo signed by Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin. The memo stated that no individuals currently serving in the armed forces shall be separated solely on the basis of their refusal to receive the COVID-19 vaccine if they sought an accommodation on religious, administrative, or medical grounds. The military will also end all ongoing reviews of such requests, removing any adverse actions associated with denials. The department will continue to promote and encourage COVID-19 vaccination for all service members, the memo stated. The department has made COVID-19 vaccination easy, convenient. I mean, I don't need to read the rest, but I think the first thing I'll say is just this ties into something we've spoken about. military recruitment numbers down. And we covered a few months back, they're loosening tattoo policies. And I think, yeah, there are people out there who are like, I don't want to join for this reason. And if you can't get the recruitment numbers, it doesn't make sense to have all these reasons that people can't join and excuses for people not to join. And yeah, it shouldn't have been there in the first place, because statistically we know it's not a major issue of military members dying from COVID-19 because of refusal to take the vaccine. It's just not. Far more military veterans statistically dying by their own hands. Veteran suicide, way bigger issue. So I think this is like a common sense change in policy, and also probably selfishly they need more recruits.
Well, is it going to help with recruitment? I don't think so. That the leadership that we've all seen is, and I think it's terrible. It's awful. The things they push, the politics they push, instead of looking out for the people that are actually serving. And so, but you know, if they wouldn't have made this political in the beginning, probably wouldn't have been a big issue. I remember when I was in and we had to do the anthrax shots, because anthrax was a big deal, and we weren't given an option. It wasn't, do you want to take anthrax shot or not? It was, do you want to stay at Ranger Battalion? Go get the anthrax shot. And I was like, okay, well, I'm in. I signed my paperwork. I don't have a choice. You own me. And they did. The military does own you. That's when you sign up. You don't have rights as a normal citizen, and but you accept that. And I say we accept that when we go in. But you know, that time too, it wasn't a political issue. It was, do you want to live, you know, in case the anthrax gets you, or do you not want to live? Do you want to stay in the unit? And to me, it was, all of us was like, shit, fuck, screw it. We're getting shot up all the time with all different sort of vaccines and inoculations. That's just something else. And you know, I think it also shows the times now, the different times of the military, but also our leadership was somewhat better. I was in part of the General Shinseki era, where give everybody a black beret, give everybody a trophy Shinseki, which is terrible. But that is being said, I do agree with them removing it, though. I do. I'm in complete agreement with that at all, because the COVID issue has become, and it still is, more political, to my opinion. They're worried about safety. And you're right, the majority of the people within the military, they're not dying from COVID. There's a lot of other things they're dying from that, and you know, the suicide, but also drugs. I don't say meth, but
opioids,
fentanyl and so I think that's way more important. But for the military's recruitment to go up, it's going to be changing leadership.
and there probably are those people who, you know, they have a certain specific issue and their personal doctor might recommend they don't take it, and then they can't join the military. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't.
It always needs to be left up to the doctor. And that was one thing also with our shots at Ranger Battalion. The recommendation was coming down from our surgeons. We have our own Ranger doctors. It's not an Army doctor. We have surgeons that are Rangers. They're tabbed, they're scrolled, and they had that decision. Now, I was, you know, lower in the totem pole, so I'm sure they're getting orders coming down from higher that they have to follow. But I'll tell you what, most of the surgeons that I had at Ranger Battalion, they were pretty fucking outspoken. If they didn't agree with something, they didn't make a difference if you were a general. This captain that was the surgeon, he'd tell you, hey, sir, no, fuck, we're not doing that. And the general, most of the time that I saw, and this is me as a lower peon, I didn't see behind the doors because I wasn't in 06 or 05, but most of the time when the surgeon said it, it didn't matter what rank you had, the surgeon superseded whatever it was, because he's a subject matter expert. So I'm with you. I mean, and we said this on the show from the beginning when this happened. It's like, hey, just putting this out, who do you want to listen to? Listen to your doctor. Your doctor knows. The TV doesn't know. The government doesn't know. Your personal doctor. So it should be a personal decision. So I'm glad they're removing it. I don't think it's going to help with recruitment, because there's bigger issues in the military than that. But it was.
It might on a micro level, though, right? I mean, I don't think there has to be some people who this is the reason they're not. I'm not saying it's hundreds. Not saying it's tens of thousands, but there's probably maybe a few hundred.
Maybe. I would put money. I mean, I wouldn't bet against it. Of course, there's a few. There's got to be with the thousands and tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of recruits going in. Yeah, there's got to be some that are saying, okay, I'll go join now. That, you know, I'll put up with the other shit They got rid of this. So yeah, I'll go join. So yeah, they're probably, but to say that it's going to, oh my gosh, you're going to meet the recruiting numbers because of this? No.
But I mean, how many people, right, left New York State because of the vax mandates, or LA? I mean, I know people who did. They're just regular people. Or I could even name radio people. Kane, who was on 92.3 FM, then worked at Sirius XM. He lost his job because he didn't want to get the vaccine, and they fired him from what was 92.3. They've changed the station a bunch in New York. So, I mean, I just think it'll echo the same thing in the military. There's probably those same type of people who said, I don't want to do this, and if I can't join, so be it.
Me talking on this is just from me talking to the kids. There are kids here locally that know, and they'll come and they'll talk to me about the military, and the majority of them say they're waiting. They're going to wait 2 years. What does that coincide with? The next election. They're waiting for the leadership to change. But in the meantime, what I love that they're doing is they're going to school. It's like, well, yeah. And I even recommend it. Like, hey, I got my degree before I went in. So you know what? That's not a bad idea. Go to school, go to a trade school, go 2 years, let this clear out, let this administration push their way out. I don't know who's going to win the next one. And I'm not even going to roll. I don't really follow it a whole bunch too. I wouldn't think that this administration, if he ran again, would win just because of what has taken place over 2 years so far. But I do believe that a lot of it, again, has to do with just the leadership that's in charge. And Milley is not Milley is not a good leader. Just from what I've seen, and the things that have gone on, where the emphasis has been put on changing base names, instead of actually taking care of troops, where money has been being spent, not training your troops, but putting more money into a war that I still don't know if we should even be in. But we could go down, we could go down that rabbit hole, brother. And I don't want to go down that way because we'll be talking, me and you'll be talking about it for the next 30 minutes. But it is a step. It is something I think that was right and should be pulled back, because the vaccine to me was not so much, especially in the military, more about safety. It was a political stance, and that's horseshit. Politics should never be put before patriots, should never be put before those that served, but 99.9% of the time they are. And I know that for sure too. But still, maybe it's a small victory within the military ranks, and you're right, maybe it will help a bit, but I see an influx in military that will meet the recruiting numbers if a Biden administration loses the next election, and someone that's coming doesn't, in that footsteps, doesn't win. If a Democrat doesn't win the election, I'll just put it plain like that. If a Democrat doesn't win the election, military numbers will go up. I just think that's going to happen. And maybe you and I can talk about that one time. We have you and I only, and we can go through that more of why I feel that way. But that's my opinion, is what may happen. But I could be completely wrong, and you guys can all say, Tano, you're fucked up. All right, I am. You're right. And I would admit it if that isn't the case. If we're still going in 2 years, maybe we'll remember to talk about this.
Yeah, hopefully we are still going. Well, with that, we're going to get over to Brad, but I got to mention, you guys, we're actually just about at the time of SHOT Show. Chris and I won't be there, but who will be there and is going to have the best booth in the building? Photonis Defense and Fort Scott. They're going to have two best booths. But the reason I say Photonis is because they have that night vision demonstration. So get there and sign up, because there's going to be a ton of people signing up to see that. If you go to @Photonis Defense on Instagram, they'll give you details of where they'll be at SHOT Show. So as you're hearing this, if you're in the firearms industry and you want to get a demo, because we get plenty of questions, why should I spend this amount on night vision? I could just go to Cabela's, I've heard it, and spend a few $100 on night vision. There's a world of difference between what you're going to get with state-of-the-art technology like Photonis. So check them out. Now you can have the superpower to see in the dark with the Viper Binocular Night Vision System by Photonis Defense. It's the global leader in night vision solutions, providing more high-quality night vision capabilities than anyone. Military, law enforcement, and public safety end users utilize Photonis Defense solutions to give them the edge at night in tactical situations and rescue operations. Hunters, shooters, boaters, and enthusiasts can rely on the Photonis Defense Viper Binocular to become masters of darkness. The new Viper binocular system carries the same features and benefits as the Photonis Defense Viper monocular with the ruggedized body, and harnesses the power of the Echo intensifier tubes. I'm mixing up my words here. So harnesses the power of the Echo intensifier tubes, giving you sharper images, reduced halo, and industry-leading ultra-fast auto gating across the range of dynamic operating conditions. Visit Photonis Defense for more information, photonisdefense.com, or look for Photonis Defense product options from your night vision dealer, photonisdefense.com. And if you're at SHOT Show, check them out. Also, of course, all of our shows are sponsored by Fort Scott Munitions. FSM is a manufacturer of multi-federal patented solid copper and brass CNC spun ammunition. It's designed to tumble upon impact in soft tissue, leaving devastating wound channels for faster bleed out and quicker incapacitation. This ammo was originally developed to innovate and improve on the standard of military grade ammunition design. It was found that not only did the TUI ammunition outperform competitors in the self-defense industry, but it quickly became apparent that it will be a top contender for hunters alike. With the ammunition being CNC spun, the tolerances are some of the tightest on the market, ensuring that you receive the same results with each pull of the trigger. Fort Scott Munitions is available throughout privately owned businesses in all 50 states. You can go to the dealer locator on the website and go to fsm.com, and you'll get a discount with us with the promo code BattleLine. You'll get 15% off. Only available to listeners of the Battle Line podcast, fsm.com, promo code BattleLine. I'm going to hold up my tin here. Do they still have the Battle Line tactical tins?
You have to check. You have to check. I believe they do. I remember signing like 500 of those things. So I know they sold quite a few over Christmas holidays, but I think they still do. Just check on their website. But if it says it's sold out, then it's sold out, and they're limited run. And that's sorry. We'll have to wait till next year. But I think there's still a few left.
Well, if they have them, get them. And if they don't, check out the other tins because they're all great.
Yeah,
so fsm.com, you'll get 15% off with us when you use the promo code BattleLine. Fort Scott Munitions is a proud supporter of Chris Peranto, BattleLine Tactical, and the BattleLine Podcast. So joining us for the first time on BattleLine Podcast is Brad Podliska. Man, a lot on your resume, I have to say, genuinely. Staff member of the U.S. House Select Committee investigating Benghazi, Air Force Reserve Intelligence Officer, Assistant Professor of Military and Security Studies at Georgetown University. And of course, we're having you on because you are the author of Fire Alarm, which is out now because it'll be Monday. My introduction to you really was we had Sarah Adams on the podcast, and we spoke about a lot of stuff during the Benghazi committee, during the investigation, stuff that she really uncovered outside of that committee with Boone that no one heard about, really, including Chris,
some of the
prior to the podcast. And I remember speaking with you on Twitter, and I know Sarah endorses what you do, and you were saying, I have a few other things that I think is going to break some ground in terms of why was a YouTube video blamed. And I got into the book. I know Chris got into the book as well. And I think an interesting way to start it off, I mean, we're going to cover a lot of ground here, though, is I know you're very proud of this quote. It's in your Twitter bio, and we could maybe get into the story behind it that I know led to a lawsuit, was from Trey Gowdy describing you. And the quote is, he wouldn't do what his supervisors instructed him to do. And I love that quote.
And that led to it. Wait, that was the go ahead. I don't. I mean, I kind of know that, but I didn't know it led to is that the lawsuit that you took to them, or they took to you, or what? Yeah, what happened? What was all that about?
Yeah, so I technically took it to them, and it was a USERRA lawsuit. So I was a military reservist, and I went on military leave, and then as soon as I got good performance reports before I left, as soon as I got back, the investigation had changed because lo and behold, this New York Times article comes out about Clinton's emails while I'm gone. I come back, the investigation has changed. And so I was conducting a far-ranging, very deep investigation, and it had changed when I got back. And they said, basically, they just started trumping up charges on me when I got back. I was fired, and so that was the USERRA lawsuit. And Trey Gowdy's credit, and everybody asked, are you mad at Trey Gowdy? Absolutely not at all. He told me he was going to look at the evidence. He looked at the evidence. He settled the lawsuit. And so I have no issue with Trey Gowdy. I had lots of issues with the investigation, but that's a different topic.
Well, yeah, there's a lot of I read that, we can get in. We're going to get into that first. I mean, second or third, fourth. I don't know. We'll get into that. But before we do, I would like to get in your background a little bit, and I would like to get, because we do have a lot of youngsters that want to join, people that are thinking about joining, and especially Benghazi. There's honestly there's some great things about that night, especially for me. I'm still in awe of some of the things that the guys did that I was able to witness. But a lot of there's always a bad taste when some people hear Benghazi, and hopefully we can change that a bit. But before that, we had careers, and there were reasons we went in, and that's what I'd like to get into first is, you were in the Air Force Reserves, but government service, but what brought you to that? And was it some epiphany you had in high school? Was it in college? And like me, where I just got suckered in by an Army recruiter because I was dumb enough to look his way, or, that's what I'd like to get into first, because I do think a lot of our young listeners and those that want to join, they like those stories because it's an unknown. And when it's not as intimidating, and maybe we can get more people to join, because there's numbers down right now. We'd love to get more people in the military.
No, yeah, absolutely. So I was a history buff growing up. I lived about 45 minutes from Gettysburg, about 45 minutes from Antietam. So that was all the school trips. And so I did a lot of military history reading growing up, decided to major in international relations in college. And then after that, I just applied probably, 10 applications a week. I got in with the DOD Defense Department, said, hey, I'm doing military stuff anyway. I might as well join the reserves. So I was fortunate. I was working at the Pentagon at the time, and some of the guys helped me out with getting a commission, and served 20 years in the reserves. And, in terms of Benghazi and all that, I was working the topic as a civilian analyst. And so that's why I got hired to the Benghazi committee.
Now, did you want to go in intel was that what your goal was, or did you just happen to fall into that? And because that's just the way the path went.
It's kind of just, I thought it was cool. Like, oh, those are the guys with all the secrets. Like Nathan Hale growing up, you learned about him in the American Revolution.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, really cool. Of course, it's government bureaucracy.
Yeah.
It's not exactly James Bond type world.
Yeah, don't even get me started. I know all those Jason Bournes that came over their first trip and realized, it's not Jason Bourne shit we're doing over here. No, it's not at all. I know, but I mean, it still has its. I know there are still some cool things that go on, and
absolutely,
and the intel, and working as long as you stay and you don't get into the politics of it, and you're just working. It's a wonderful job. It really is. Absolutely. And if you can keep on that, it's just for contractors and guys like myself, it's easy to stay on, because I can fight with, like I did. I fought with Bob. I fought with other chiefs of beta. I was an arrogant bastard. But I was able to do that because they needed guys. If they were going to fire him, fine, fire me. I'll get another contract with somebody else. With you, when you're an employer or staffer, I think it's a little bit more straight and narrow. But tell me, maybe it's not. Maybe you are able to veer out. And you were a DoD contractor. Were you a DoD contractor for a little while too, or was it always DoD?
No, I was a DoD contractor for about 6 months, but mostly GS employee.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I think you nailed it on the head. So what you guys were doing that night with the Benghazi attack, you guys were having to think on your own. You having to engage in your own initiative. And what was occurring back in DC was very much a bureaucratic process.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, they played the game of telephone. They played the game incorrectly, and we can get into all that, all the mistakes that were made.
Well,
I think of I remember Jack Murphy actually saying it to me, and it kind of stuck with me, how like the bureaucracy, especially when guys do something that's considered wrong, they act like these decisions are made from like the Starship Enterprise. And it's like, I'm not a military veteran, but I know that's not the way it works. It's split-second decisions. So it's very easy for guys in high levels of bureaucracy to say this process wasn't followed and this should have been done this specific way. And it's like, in life or death situations, that's not the real world.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. And so Panetta did make an initial decision, it turned out to be the wrong decision. And then the bureaucracy caught up with that, and there was just one delay after another. Something you won't read about the Benghazi report is there was a January 25th, 2012 kidnapping where an American, Jessica Buchanan, was taken hostage in Somalia, and a Dane, Paul Deestead Hagen, were taken hostage.
Okay.
And what they had run is the military under Panetta had run Con Plan 300. They were very successful at that operation. And so Panetta, what immediately came to his mind when he heard about Benghazi was, this is another hostage rescue operation.
Mm-hmm.
And, they thought Ambassador Stevens was taken hostage, and they actually thought they had much more time than they did. And so, the Tonto and you guys at the annex, there was never any intention, never any plan to actually rescue you guys or to save you there.
And I did read, I obviously I got the feeling of that about 1:45. I was like, shit. And I remember looking at Boone. I said right to him, we're both, and I'm saying what he's thinking, because over that time frame, of us fighting and then being on the rooftops in the second firefight, I don't think a lot in DC knew that we had already set up our cure. We knew the guys where they were at. That was our jobs. That were when we're going to Sebha, we're going farther south, or going to outside of Derna. We set up cure of plans, and we're Rangers. That's what we do. And so I knew where the fast guys were. Not just me, but the whole team. We knew where the SIF team was. We knew where the 10 Special Forces group, the STT team, those guys, we knew all those. And actually, a lot of us knew a lot of those guys personally because we served with them. So we knew where they were at. We knew how far they were. We knew who could move. But at 1:45 after Boone, he kept coming to me and saying, hey, SIF's on its way. No, hey, 555th, they're on their way. Hey, those Suda Bay guys, there's a detachment. And we knew there was a detachment in Suda Bay because that's where we lived. Before we went to Benghazi, we'd stop there. So we talked to the fucking pilot. So it was like, hey, 555th's on there. No, and I remember I was like, dude, you're breaking my heart. Fucking, and if it's not Domino's Pizza, I don't want to know who the fuck's coming anymore. But that was when it's like, shit, nobody's coming. And then when that happened, it was, okay, well, we can give up, or we can figure out how are we going to get out of here. But that was something where I learned from the book you're reading. It was, reading where in politics, and when you're in, I don't know why they didn't go after it more. Why the fuck, did they think we had so much time? Why did they think? I mean, we're getting hit, and why were they not listening? I know our calls that we're getting hit were going up. I knew we had an ISR. They're seeing it. Why the fuck did it well, it's still a hostage rescue operation. Hey, we can still got time to get people down there. That's what blows my mind. Yes, you may not have got there to rescue the ambassador. I got that. That's understandable. And I testified to that. But you don't know when it's going to end. That was our biggest argument. It was, hey, fuckers, excuse my language. No, fuck that. Hey, and I even testified to this. You never knew when it was going to end. So how can you say you didn't have enough time? And that's not how we are in the military. You are in the military. That's not how we're getting guys there, regardless. So why wasn't? And I know I read the book. It was actually, it wasn't as dry as you said it was. It wasn't dry. It was actually pretty good. No, I mean, it made sense to me. I got it. But tell me, go more into depth on that, because you don't know when it's going to end. So to me, that's just an excuse. That's just hey, we're covering our ass. And civilians, they're going to say, okay, you're right. Military personnel, bullshit. That's not what we do. We come regardless. So what happened? Yeah. What happened there?
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. So Panetta, Obama, and Dempsey meet at the White House at 5 p.m. Eastern time. Obama says, do whatever you have to do to save American lives. He's the commander in chief, and to his credit, he authorized do whatever you got to do. By the time Panetta's back at the Pentagon at 6 p.m., he's meeting with Dempsey, Ham, I think Winnenfeld, the vice chair, and a couple others. They make the decision. This is a hostage rescue. We've seen this before, like I said, in Somalia in January.
Somalia, yeah, sure.
What happened then? We had time. We got to set this up. Okay, let's pull Con-Plan 300 off the shelf, which they did. And the real big problem with pulling a Con-Plan off the shelf is you actually got to follow doctrine. You got to go through the joint planning process. So you should be updating as you're going through things.
Of course, that's what you do.
Okay, let's talk to the guys in Libya. What's going on there? Are they still being shot at?
It's troop leading procedures. It's 101 troop leading procedures. I saw that course of action you had. That's fucking our COA. That's what you do in the military. That's like, well, shit, that's our COA. That's textbook shit you learn as a lieutenant, and they're not following it. Okay, yeah. I'm sorry. This is your interview, and I'm going into. Go ahead.
No. This is good. That's exactly right. So they did not follow it. They did not follow doctrine. And so that's fine. Panetta has the authority not to follow doctrine. However, he assumes the responsibility if he screws up. And he did screw up by thinking it was a hostage rescue and ruling out almost automatically things such as the F-16s conducting the flyover. There was the Marines, the 24th Marine
24th.
Expeditionary Unit,
Yep.
which Adam Housley has reported on was somewhere in the region. And Adam Housley has reported those guys were ready to respond. Now, it's a long flight. They're coming from Djibouti, but they got organic acids. They could have responded. Like you said, we don't know when this thing was going to end. But all this stuff is automatically ruled out because they're thinking Con Plan 300. We ran this before. Let's run it again. We got time. Let's get guys to the staging base. So you guys weren't even a part of their equation in Benghazi. What they were thinking of is we got a NEO in Libya. We might have to get some guys out of Tripoli or Benghazi if they're still there. And then we got to prepare for instability in the region. And this is just going to mushroom when they attend another meeting at 7:30. This one Clinton's in charge of. And what the Benghazi committee, they missed this. So Clinton is the senior official at the 7:30 meeting. She's going to read a note. Blonde hair individual, I think I have it here somewhere, was taken hostage. So Ambassador Stevens is taken hostage. So they're doubling down now on this hostage rescue. And so once again, they just simply thought they had more time. You guys weren't a part of their rescue operation or rescue plan.
Were they not communicating with anybody from the agency? Were they not communicating with Morrell? Were they not communicating with, because we were 10 Alpha Common, we're putting the whole world where there was a CIA radio, they knew what was going on. And that same radio's in the 7th floor. That same radio's it's in the Pentagon. It's in, I know it's in I know it's in the executive area there. They're here. The chatter's going continuously. That's all you got to do is just listen to it. Are they not listening to it? What are they doing?
So that's a good question. So we know that Clinton talked to Petraeus, and she talked to Hicks, and Hicks certainly said, "Hey, this is a full-blown assault that's going on."
Yeah, great. For everybody, tell who Greg Hicks is. So everybody knows if they don't know who he is.
So he was the deputy ambassador, deputy chief of mission in Libya, and he had exchanged phone calls with Christopher Stevens.
Because he was sitting in Tripoli at the time when the attack
was sitting in Tripoli.
That's who they're calling. Yep.
But this stuff is not communicated either at the 6 p.m. meeting that Panetta's leading or at the 7:30 meeting that Clinton is leading. It becomes a game of telephone that, oh no, this is hostage rescue. Clinton reads this note at the meeting saying a blonde-haired individual has been taken hostage, meaning Ambassador Stevens. And then, was it Landau testified or Leading testified to the fact that basically the military stood down for 5 hours.
They did.
From 6 to 11 p.m. Okay, this is basically a search for the Ambassador Stevens.
What shocked me when I read the book, Brad, is that was not dug into. That right there was, why did you not listen to the guys? Who the fuck were you listening to? Why did you not get on and figure out what was going on at the time in Libya? Because you knew people were there. You have a feed you're watching. From what maybe I missed it in the book, but from when I read it, I was like, they didn't dig into that. And that was one of the problems, is nobody ever went any farther than, oh, it didn't happen. Oh, okay. Well, you guys should have. It was never, well, why the fuck didn't it happen? Why didn't you communicate? Who didn't you call? Why didn't you listen to guys in Libya?
Exactly.
And why do you, now that I got you here, I've got the black and white. What is your gut feeling of why that didn't happen?
You mean in terms of the investigation? Why weren't these questions asked?
It's just exactly, because you put those in your conclusion a lot in the book, which is great. You're like, this is what we should have asked and didn't. And I think you actually did put that in the book, is like, we should have delved into this farther, but we didn't. And what I got to when I read that, I was like, well, Brad, go farther. I want to know why they didn't. So, but we're here, and this is your opinion. I know we're not going to hold you to it, but this is what our show is. It's a show of opinions, and people can say you're wrong. That's fine. I do want your opinion, because I have my opinions, but you were there. I wasn't sitting in that select committee. I was getting interviewed from times, but I wasn't there 24/7 like you were. So why do you think?
So this is where I spent a considerable amount of time in the book saying it's a mistake to think this is actually Gowdy's investigation. This was Speaker Boehner's investigation.
Yeah, that's right. I remember. Okay.
Speaker Boehner did not want to conduct the Benghazi investigation. He was forced to by the conservatives. This actually, I call it the first battle in the Republican Civil War, the Republican fracture. So you get this war between Boehner and Jordan that's going on. So Jordan leads the populist wing, which Trump's going to take over, and that's what we have today. Boehner didn't want to conduct the investigation. So when I first got there for the first 6 months or so, it was investigate whomever, whatever agency, whatever individual, that's fine. And then this Clinton email story comes out, and it's all hands on deck for Clinton's emails. And as I said, meanwhile, I get back from reserve drill. I'm like, hey man, I'm willing to go after whomever still. And so in my book, I tried to pin down, in terms of these politicians, who actually want to follow this thing through to the end. And I found that Jordan, Westmoreland, and Gowdy were the guys that stuck it out until the end. And that's why I say it's kind of this other agency phase of the investigation. So the intelligence community, the DOD, the White House was kind of tacked on the end of the investigation. But because I also make a point in the book, if you don't, the subject matter experts are kind of tossed to the side because they might not be loyal to the party. So you have political operatives that are asking these questions. Yeah. And so I would tell anyone, go online, look at some of these transcripts and some of the questions that are asked, and you'll see why those questions were not answered.
I got you. And that makes sense. And I do remember that. I do remember that part of the book with Boehner. I got that feeling with him in the first one too, with the Mike Rogers committee in that first, where they, and that was very unorthodox too, when they brought us in, and instead of interviewing us singly like the select committee did, they brought the three of us in, myself, Jack Silva, and Oz, because we had we had actually put our papers in. We were out. And the one that actually heard the stand down order, Tig, he was not done with the agency yet. And they made him testify with the GRS staff team leader. And I'll be quite honest with you, that intimidated the hell. In fact, I remember when he came out and after he finally left the agency, we didn't know how to act. And he was very intimidated. And he's not, he takes a big Marine. He's going to tell you, wasn't it? Yeah, he was.
Yeah.
To answer those questions, and at that time too, and you mentioned Mark Zaid. I did think Mark represented us pretty well, but that first one, I wish he would have given us more input of how to, because we didn't know what we could say, or we would just let the agency, as far as we know, we say, the shitter's blue in Kabul and we're going to jail. Yeah, because we don't know. But I do think that was an intimidation tactic by not allowing, first of us, we as a group, we did it, which was, I don't think was correct, but also putting Tig to interview with the GRS staffer when Tig is still part of GRS, even though he's a contractor. So he let the GRS staffer, which I can't say his name and I don't care for him, but answer all the questions, which led us down that road of honestly, were they getting the right information or were they just getting what they wanted to hear? And I know you came on after that, and that's the reason the select committee came in effect, is because of that. But did you see other intimidation or some political tactics when you're doing the interviewing or watching the interviews of this, the line of questioning? I mean, just behind the scenes, did they really want to get to the bottom of it, or was, okay, let's see if we can steer them this way so we can avoid this, we can get to C with avoiding A? Does that make sense? Maybe I'm going all over the place with this, but does that?
No, it's certainly. So if you're working for an agency and then you're called to testify in Congress about that agency and you're still employed at that agency, what's the natural tendency? Well, I don't want to lose my job.
I'm not
going to be a whistleblower. And they can make all the promises they want in the world, but retaliation does occur. And so there's certainly that. And then in terms of the questions, it was really left up to the individuals to ask the questions. And so the quality of questions is only good as the individual asking them.
Makes sense. No, that makes perfect sense. Yeah. No, I don't want to be cutting you off because
I mean, you were the guy who was there, so you have plenty of more questions than myself. But I do know, for you and getting into the book itself of the problems with the investigation, as you kind of allude to, is that this was just all about going after Hillary Clinton. And a lot of our audience is not going to want to hear that because of the fact that I think our audience is fixated on that. It was what the media fixated on, as opposed to what your interest is and what Sarah's is getting to the bottom of who attacked Chris and the other guys and why it went down and why the response was so poor.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. So I'm not either pro-Clinton or anti-Clinton. She was just another individual that I want to investigate. And I was actually working on the talking points that very much deal with Clinton. And we can get into that with Jake Sullivan if we want. And I was basically told, and this is in my lawsuit, this is public information, that basically stand down in the talking point investigation. The staff director said only right-wing nut jobs care about the talking points, and what he was talking about was Jim Jordan when it comes to that. And so in my book, I actually investigate who actually was worried about the talking points in terms of the politicians. And I find that Jordan and Pompeo and even Gowdy were truly concerned about the talking points. But that's just an example of one of the issues that would have affected Clinton that wasn't investigated.
Was investigated what I got was investigated extremely poorly is what
exactly.
Really,
exactly. And so I know the investigators that were involved with that, they took over after I was gone, and they truly wanted to look into that. And that's why Jordan and Pompeo have their own appendix to the report, because they truly wanted to look into it themselves. But it was hamstrung because of this, as I said, this fracture between Boehner and Jordan.
That's true.
And I don't know why there was anyone would care about why somebody would go out of their way to have the talking points dropped, to be honest with you, because I think it is an important topic.
Well, it is. I mean, let's get into that, because I do remember that too, and I remember the Rhodes brothers and they're influencing for those. And get into that. You can tell people they may have forgotten who was it, Ben Rhodes and his brother. You know, damn, talk about a conflict of interest. Holy shit.
David Rhodes.
David Rhodes. But yeah, I think people would love to hear that as well, and I'd like to hear more about it, because that's huge. What I saw is so much fabricating this story, fabricating lies so people won't be implicated, in my opinion, fabricating or making something up so the truth doesn't get out there. And that wasn't hammered. I was like a softball, and the people in the committee didn't hammer. Why did you do it? Why did you make this up? Why did you say it was this? Okay, you gave us an answer, but what was the reason why? Were you trying to save face? Were you trying to help Obama out? Were you trying to help Clinton out? What was the reason behind fabrication of this video? And
I'm interested in getting into that, because that was what originally interested me, honestly, in this interview. Was I think a tweet from you that were like, from where you said in this book, I'm going to get into why a YouTube video was blamed. And that really is one of the big puzzle pieces, I think, for us, because I remember at the time, I mean, I was working in radio, and I remember seeing the video, and it was like a cheaply put together piece of crap video. It wasn't the reason for this attack. It didn't have millions of hits. It wasn't some, so yeah, love not to interrupt Chris here, but yeah, love to get into
go, Brad. I'll shut up for 5 minutes. I'll shut up. Go ahead, bro.
No, so yeah, this is really interesting. So I talked to Ethan Turin, who was actually in Leaving the Night of the Attacks, and he also reached the same.
Yeah, we have his book here because we got sent. Yeah, Ethan Turin's book. He wanted to come on, but I figured,
tell Ethan, though, hiding in the Tibesti Hotel doesn't count as being on site. I just want to let him know that. Okay, you can tell, or I'll tell him that myself if I ever see him. But go ahead, man. Go ahead.
Yeah, so the talking points is fascinating to me. So there's this whole. Where does CIA get involved? Where does HIPSI get involved with asking for the talking points? And all that, according, what I found is a moot point. These talking points, blaming it on the video, were written at 9:32 p.m. on the night of the attack. So you guys haven't even come under mortar attack yet, and they've already blamed it on the video.
So they're already sculpting a narrative before. I forgot about that in the book. Yeah, I remember reading that. Jesus, yeah, I forgot about that.
And that is a result of that 7:30 p.m. meeting where Clinton's in charge. So 5 of the 10 action items after the meeting are blame it on the video. But what do we do about Pastor Jones and all this type of stuff? And that's because, as I talk about in my book, this groupthink mentality takes place within the 7:30 meeting of the video. So now Ben Rhodes, I don't know his role in that meeting. I know he was chomping at the bit, very likely, because here's an out for Obama. This is not a failure of the U.S. in the GWAT campaign. This is simply about a mob that's run amok because of this anti-Islamic video. And so this is where, in my opinion, after the 7:30 meeting, this is where it becomes very much a partisan issue for the Obama administration. They were facing an attack from Mitt Romney at the time. Romney sends out his tweet or whatever he sent out, blaming the Obama administration. And so Ben Rhodes, my research, Jake Sullivan writes the talking points, blaming it on the video. He bounces ideas off of Victoria Nuland, bounces ideas off of Ben Rhodes in a phone call, but he writes them. Ben Rhodes denied writing those initial talking points. That's going to be Clinton's 10:08 p.m. statement that night, blaming it on the video.
Yeah.
Ben Rhodes is then going to take that and he is going to plagiarize it. And it is going to be handed out as talking points to the rest of the administration, including Susan Rice, for when she goes on the Sunday talk shows. And so the point is, it didn't matter what intelligence was coming in, what intelligence wasn't coming in. At 9:32 p.m. on the night of the attacks, the Obama administration had made the decision to blame it on a video, and they stuck with that narrative. And this is where Ethan Chern and I get into a disagreement. I say that they had to stop when Matt Olson from the NCTC testified in front of Congress on September 19th. He wasn't on board with all this partisanship. So he said, we knew from the start it was a terrorist attack. And at that point, I argue that Obama administration was forced to turn away from that narrative. Ethan Chern says, no, they continued that narrative a lot further. And what's interesting is Jake Sullivan, when he testified in front of the Benghazi committee, actually said, I think it was 2015 was his testimony, actually said, I still to this day believe it was the video had a part to play in this. And we know it had absolutely nothing to do with the attack. So, as Sarah Adams found and Ethan Chern found, this is a very well organized, full-blown assault. I know Sarah Adams says this was Zahari ordered. And then Ethan says this was an Al-Qaeda group in Libya, the Libya Islamic Fighting Group, LIFG.
I want to ask one, because I know Chris has something else to ask, but before I forget, and while we're on this topic, I want to ask it, because I asked this to Sarah. She didn't have an answer, and I've never heard an answer. The guy who produced that video was later, I believe, imprisoned for tax fraud, right?
Yes.
From your expert opinion, I would say, was that politically motivated, or was he really committing tax fraud?
So I'm speculating here. I can just say it wasn't. I thought it was going to be part of the investigation of why was this guy prosecuted. No, it wasn't. There was no impetus to actually investigate this issue. So I would speculate and say, the raised nail gets hammered. So this guy popped up and he was easy to nail in terms of prosecution. So, okay, we got the guy that made the anti-Islamic video, and we've taken care of him.
And now we're
and to me, if they did that, you know what it is beyond just Benghazi, it's an attack on free speech. It's saying, if you make a video insulting Islam, insulting anything that we deem you can't insult, we're going to lay the hammer of the federal government on you, and we're going to shut you up.
Yeah, it's certainly bad optics. So if it's not related to this anti-Islamic video, like why all of a sudden does the guy get investigated for tax fraud or whatever the allegation was? It's certainly bad optics, and we're certainly going through this now with some of the issues we're facing with the mishandling classified and all that.
Well, that's the thing is, if I do think Benghazi, a lot of things that have gone on now, if they would have been remedied there, if somebody would have been punished, then I even said this to Trey. I did. I said it actually during my testimony it was Trey and there was Adam Schiff. Don't get me started with him. Adam, Elijah Cummings, who actually treated me very, very well. I'm very respectful to me. And Congresswoman Duckworth, who was very respectful. But, she's a Blackhawk pilot. She used to fly us Rangers at Rangers Corps, so that she was very respectful. But I do remember, talking to him and said, if you would just make an example out of one of these people that were involved, whether it was Clinton, whether it was Undersecretary Kennedy, whether even Obama, I know people. I still have a hard time with the commander in chief not spot checking and continually. He was on point with the Osama bin Laden raid. You got an Ambassador Stevens. She should be on point with this too. Not saying do everything you can, then go to bed or whatever the fuck he did. But I was like, if you just make an example of one, you're going to stop a lot of this crap that's going to go on that we're seeing now, which is politicians just literally getting away with manslaughter in the very least, but getting away with a lot of things that they shouldn't be getting away with, and they didn't. And why? Why?
That's the one the question. So I started my book and I ended my book with, why don't these people just take responsibility and let's figure this out on why this happened, who organized this attack, why it was blamed on a video, all the stuff, why was Complan 300 run without having gone through the planning process, etc. Well, let's get to the bottom of this. I end with the JFK Bay of Pigs example, where JFK said, "Look, it was a disaster. I'm responsible. I'm the president. It was my fault."
That I love that, and that's how. Whether you like JFK or not, that's respect. That's responsible leadership. That's ownership, and I love that you put that in the book, because you're spot on. And his numbers dipped, but he paid the price for that. But he took fucking responsibility for it. And
absolutely.
And
So that's why, yeah, we as a country now are still fractured because of this. If you ask, well, actually, if you ask anybody, did they properly investigate? They'd probably say no. But we as a country are completely fractured over Benghazi. You know, cocktail parties, you can't bring up Benghazi because somebody's going to say, "Oh, that's where the Republicans were trying to get Clinton." Oh, that's where
it's crazy. I mean, even when I just tell people, right? I don't go to cocktail parties, right? if I'm at a show or something, and people ask, like, "Hey, what do you do? What's your podcast about?" and I just bring up Benghazi, Chris Peranto, people are going to have opinions. Absolutely. And a lot of those opinions are rooted in like absolutely nothing. It's just rooted in, if they watch CNN, Benghazi was a big Republican conspiracy theory. And if they watch Fox News, fuck Hillary Clinton. You know what I mean? And I just feel like there's a lot more to this story than the talking points that we were all fed.
And Brad, you know what we haven't got into, and what I really, because they've gotten off scot-free too, is all those generals involved. Absolutely. Carter Ham, the AFRICOM general, what they saw. I know, I think they think very little of us people that were on the ground, and the people that we've known and worked with. We know people that were sitting in those command centers. We know the people that were flying this art. We know the guys that were on the ground that were waiting to come get us, that feel. I can't tell you how. I've had one Marine buddy of mine crying to me. That was one of those fast company guys that just we were trying. We were sitting there for 2 hours. Nobody's telling us anything. Why are none of the generals? Why were none of them got any sort of reprimand at all? And if General Ham could have said, "You know what, screw you, Death. I'll take the hit, Panetta. Send guys. He's got his Ranger tab. You know better than that. Never leave a fallen comrade." But none of them were ever investigated. Nothing came of it. And if it did, maybe I missed it in the book. I didn't see that any of the generals took any responsibility for it, and none of them were reprimanded for it as well. In fact, I'm still at a loss. What the fuck? Why? What happened?
No, that's a really good point. So that's kind of, we can, go down the rabbit hole here. Why aren't senior leaders held accountable anymore? I think if you were to Google, when's the last like 3 or 4 star that was fired, or last Secretary of Defense that was fired, it just doesn't happen. It certainly wasn't the case in Benghazi. So, okay, Panetta makes this decision, it's hostage rescue, he's wrong. But as a commander, him and Dempsey and Ham had assumed the risk if they're wrong. And so why weren't they held accountable for that wrong decision?
But they're just after that too, though. Like you said, the course of action, you adjust fire. Hey, we're wrong here. We still are in motion. This game is still going on, but they didn't do anything. They just stopped. I mean, is that, or did I miss something, or were they trying to do something else and they didn't get to it? I just saw it just kind of stop.
No, so these guys, they issue Complan 300, they issue the orders, and these guys will testify they went home and went to bed because they thought the attack was over. And then they wake up, all of them wake up very early in the morning and report back in, we had the second attack. Oh, our assumption was wrong. This is not a hostage rescue. Bad things have happened. It takes them actually 23 hours to get military assets into Libya. And so, and what it comes down to is who's going to hold these guys responsible? Well, at this level, it's going to have to be the president is going to have to hold these guys responsible for having screwed up.
And because of the talking points and all that going down, there's no way they put themselves in a corner they can't get out of now. So now it would be up to Trey Gowdy to. What, it's not up to Trey. Is it up to Trey, or is it up to the Attorney General, the Sessions at the time, to actually bring charges? And not that I'm not saying it's not. I've given, that's not going to happen, and I'm not upset about that. Shit happen. Sometimes things just doesn't work out the way you want it to, and that's okay. It's just one of those things. God, that's when Christianity comes in, and you believe in God and you just be patient. But the committee in itself could never have brought, and help me if I'm wrong, could never have brought anybody to really justice. It could just have done the report. Is that right?
No, that's exactly right. So we actually saw this with January 6th committee. The only thing Congress can do is issue a report and refer charges to the Department of Justice. Okay. But it's entirely an executive branch decision. I guess Congress could technically impeach. Well, actually, they can impeach a federal official if they want to. It's not done now. They're talking about doing it with a DHS secretary. But with these congressional investigators, they don't have the authority to bring criminal charges or charges against anyone. The best they can do is issue the report, refer to the Department of Justice, and then of course, at the time it would have been Obama administration issue.
Because I get in fights with people on that too, because they want, why didn't nothing happen? Well, they did the report. That's all they could do. And they're yelling at me like I'm supposed to. What do you so, but I wanted to make sure I was clear on that, because that's what I would tell people. And I wasn't, I'm still a dumb ranger. I wasn't too sure, but I'm glad okay, good. You reaffirmed what I was thinking. We didn't talk about it, but let's go back to it a little bit. Because you did get into the book, and I'm glad you did, because two names that are very responsible, in my opinion, and not for what happened, but prior to, were Charlene Lamb and Patrick Kennedy, the undersecretary, and who really were the ones. And Patrick Kennedy was not a buddy of ours when I was in Iraq either in 04, 05. He hated he didn't like us contract. I don't know if he hated us, but he didn't like us very well. Their role in the leading up to the attack, with the denial, with Eric Nordstrom asking for more weapons, with Greg Hicks even say, hey, we need more security. And that was never really delved into either, was it? As far as why did you guys deny it? I know it looked like a bigger signature, but was that the reason, or was it just money? Was it, talk to me, man. I'm at a loss of what the fuck and why they were never held more responsible, because I think they were just as responsible as, if you want to go after Clinton, well, you got to go after those two as well, and a lot of those undersecretaries.
Yeah, so that's exactly right. So Charlene Lamb, she testified, I believe, to the fact that money was never an issue. So then why are all these requests being denied?
Yeah.
And as far as I can tell, and I agree this wasn't as investigated as well as it should have been, it was, well, everything's fine. We've had these national elections in July. We're progressing towards democracy, and we're good to go. Because nothing's happened, so therefore nothing's going to happen in the future. And that, of course, turned out to be a really bad assumption. But that's where I kind of go back to in my book. I talk about, okay, who was actually in charge of the Libyan policy? And what I discovered, and Ethan Chern writes a lot more about this than I do, is that Obama didn't want to get involved in Libya. He was dragged into Libya by Clinton, Samantha Powers, and Susan Rice.
But he's the commander in chief. You're the fucking boss, dude.
Yeah, exactly.
You're the boss. So tell him no. I'm in charge.
And so we know after the Benghazi attack, he takes literally foreign policy back from Clinton, and he basically shuts down U.S. operations in Libya as a result of the attack. But from the time going after Gaddafi with the NATO mission up until the time of the attacks, this was Clinton's ballgame as best as I could determine. But this is where I talked about, well, they should have brought in Ethan Chern and asked who are the U.S. players. They should have brought in the National Security Council staffer, Benjamin Fishman, who know all the players involved, say, who's actually making policies here? And then you build your case up from the bottom. What they did is you have people like, Pete Roscom, who during the hearing says, hey, Clinton, you were in charge of foreign policy in Libya, weren't you? And then she, of course, denies it and says, no, it was Obama. Well, that's not the way, in my opinion, you conduct an investigation. Why were we there in the first place? Who was in charge? Why was security so lax?
One of those interesting things too, because it's like, I remember when Obama ran in 08, and if you look at what he ran on foreign policy, I remember like the big things he was talking about, it was getting rid of nuclear weapons and not being the policeman of the world. And that's definitely not how he ran things.
No, that's exactly right. So I read somewhere where his idol was Brent Scowcroft. He did not, Obama didn't believe in nation building unless it was a multilateral effort. So he didn't want to have all these overseas wars that we were involved in. He voted against the Iraq war, etc., because he didn't want to get involved in nation building.
But we did more under him. I spent a lot of my time. I was in Afghanistan. I was in Iraq. I was in part of Syria. I was in Libya. I went to Sana'a. People know a lot of that. Me and Boone and Jack were in Sana'a when that quagmire fucking happened. So he didn't want to do all this stuff, or at least what he says. But we were doing it. So where's the truth in that too? But we're getting kind of off subject, but that's my thing. I heard that as well. I'm like, well, bullshit, because I was on the ground in all these places, and we were. So what was the truth in that? Help me out, man.
That's where the Arab Spring, from what I understand, kind of changes the mentality within the Obama administration and Clinton. She had been pounded by Obama in 2008 for having voted for the Iraq War, and so Clinton, I think, and once again, we don't know, this is speculation as best as I can tell, was telling Obama, let me handle it with my smart power doctrine. and we're going to use diplomacy as the instrument of national power in these countries. With the Arab Spring, we can do all these democratic transitions, and we can have a small footprint, just send our diplomats out there with no security. And that's why, such things as having a military presence in Libya was a non-starter. Was because Obama certainly didn't want it there, and Clinton wanted to prove as Secretary of State that diplomacy was the way to go.
Well, and I knew that
it's also
part of the mission. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just gonna say. I mean, to Chris's question, right? It's like that old thing of the puppet masters behind the scenes, and that you could kind of run a campaign on whatever you want, but then when you become president, you're under the authority of, and it would be conspiracy, but like this shadow government. I remember like the Bill Hicks comedy bit where he talks about like once the president is put in office, they show him a certain angle of the Kennedy assassination, and they're like, any questions? Like, you're going to listen to what we tell you to do. So, I mean, is there any truth to that? I don't know, but it is always interesting when you see these. I mean, George Bush too. George W. Bush ran on a very humble, like non-interventionist foreign policy. 9/11 happens, that goes out the window. Everything Obama ran on, it goes out the window. And I do think like America to some extent will always be the world police, even if you have a politician run on that we need to change that. I just don't see a world where we're not. I mean, currently, right, the trillions of dollars being sent to Ukraine, whether you're pro or con, I mean, it definitely plays into us being the world police.
Yeah. I mean, we're the hegemon, we're the world's superpower. So just by default, we're going to have to be the world's police. Just by the role that we play, we want to, make sure that we have the rules in the international system set according to way that serve our interests. So kind of by default, we're.
I did, and I'm very blessed that I got to be on the ground for a lot of that. When we're working, I don't care about politics. I really don't give two shits. I don't when we're out there working. And honestly, it's just one of those things. It's why we did, and I've said this before, when we did go in and we did help with the movie, we did put that verse in there, that Rowan and Jack talking, where he says, when I did this, basically talking about we started going to Iraq, we did this for something bigger. Because we did think we were doing it for something bigger. We also learned then that, Iraq, I'm not sure now. I didn't agree with Bush on that one now either, but at least at that time when we're young, you're doing something bigger. But by the time we got to Libya and we all were like this, that something bigger.
Yeah, we certainly had mission creep after 9/11. So 9/11, it was, we're going to get the terrorists, we're going to kill the terrorists.
Yeah.
And then that after Tor Bor, that transitions into, okay, we got to do nation building.
Yeah, now we got
great. Another 20 years and $1 trillion, working on nation building. And like, okay, Saddam Hussein might have WMDs. We got to go topple him, but we can't just topple him. We got to actually try to construct
Bush just went in there because Saddam tried to kill his dad. That's my opinion. That was just a bill. It's like, you motherfucker, you tried to kill my dad. I'm like, that's my opinion. That's why we went in there. I don't know. I can't. That's just speculation again. If we're going to use that word, but one thing is that I learned nation building, overthrowing dictators. And you can give me your opinion on this too, but dictators are dictators for a reason. And sometimes the devil is better than the devil you don't. And there's a reason they're dictators, and there's a reason they are iron foot. And I know Gaddafi didn't tolerate terrorists in Libya. There was less terrorists. There were no terrorists in Libya when Gaddafi was in charge. Granted, he's an evil son of a bitch. But do you think they're happier now than they were then? And same with Syria. We're getting off subject of the book, but you've been in it too. You've seen it. You've seen Iraq. You've seen Afghanistan's a different animal. They're going to fight for. That's just what they do. They're good at it. That's their lifestyle. And I love Afghanistan. It's one of the most beautiful countries in the world. But do you think? And I don't. I don't believe in going and overthrowing dictators. I don't. I think, and that was something that changed. That I believed in, that it was necessary when I first started, but I learned over the years that no, actually we make these countries worse by doing that. But I don't know, I'd like your opinion on that. I know it's not on the book, but I just like to hear what you think about it.
Well, yeah, I mean, we have limited capabilities, limited resources. We can't go around changing all the dictatorships in the world. And as we learned in Iraq and Afghanistan, that's going to take us 20 years. Do we want to dedicate the time and the interest to actually doing that? My opinion after this is that if you ask Biden, if you ask Trump, any president after those, they're going to say, hell no. We're out of the nation building exercise for a long time. We learned our lesson. And unless somebody poses a direct, national
Direct,
security threat
yeah,
to
sure.
us, we're not going to get involved in all these countries. It's just not worth the resources.
And to me, the end doesn't justify the means, because we haven't made these places better.
Yeah.
We haven't. Just look at it. Maybe we'll get. I'm sure somebody will be pissed off, and who gives? I don't give a shit. I piss a lot of people off, but
that, you know what I mean. That's the beauty of doing the it's the beauty of doing the podcast, though, right? Because when we have Hamidi Jassim on, right, he's totally different perspective than what we're saying. Because his feeling is, if you didn't go into Iraq, I'd probably be dead right now. So I think it's great that we have people on who've been there and done it. And there's no, it's not mathematics. There's no right or wrong answer. But I do know this from all my years of interviewing guys. Like when you see guys come back like Mike Schlitz, right? Or guys who don't come back at all, like Glenn and Ty, and you see politicians not held accountable, I get it. It's like, what was the purpose of this? And what was this sacrifice for? And I think like through all these interviews, like you do learn, and from doing this podcast, how we saw Afghanistan turn out. It's hard to say this was justified. We did the right thing.
No, yeah, it is an open-ended question. We can all play armchair quarterback on whether or not it was worth it. I think we look at Afghanistan now. Is it better now than it was in 2001? I think the argument can be no. It's not any better. The Taliban are back in charge. It is better in the sense that, there's no Al-Qaeda safe haven. There's no Osama bin Laden that's plotting to build up buildings in the U.S. anymore. But, is it better? Did our time and resources actually make things into a stable democracy there?
You do some now. You're assistant professor at Georgetown, or how do you?
Oh no, I'm an assistant professor for the military, actually.
For the military. What are the?
But you were at Georgetown, correct? Because I said that in the intro.
That's where I studied. Yeah, and as a disclaimer, these are my own personal views, not those of the government.
You're kids. You're around 20 somethings or 30 somethings, correct? You're around them. What are their views on things like this now? I mean, what are they saying? What's the morale here? I know there's kids with morales that's in the toilet right now, but what do you see, and how do they view just even serving and going into countries now on behest of who knows if the government has their back anymore, or is helping them? I don't think they do for the most part, but you're still in it, so you tell me.
Well, I think it's kind of like your experience. Like you're loyal to the country, you're going to do as ordered. There's certain opinions all over the place on what we should be doing or shouldn't be doing. But people, once you sign the dotted line that you're a commissioned officer or whatever, you're going to serve, and you're going to do so willingly. With that said, though, I think we as a country, as I've said, are hopefully out of this nation building business.
I think you said it, and you hit the nail on the head too. I'm the same way. If there's a direct threat, go in there, kick the shit out of them, leave, get out. If you attack us, we attack you, get the hell out. I did like the old Ronald Reagan view of how he handled Gaddafi. Actually, bomb the shit out of him, leave him alone. Hey, don't touch us anymore, and leave. And that's how you should do it. But I'm in agreement with you. Nation building, and it doesn't work. And getting back to the book and getting back to your talk with your investigation and with the select committee. I do think you did hit the nail on the head. It's just Clinton. Yes, Clinton should have been investigated. Clinton was part of it, but she wasn't the only part. And that's when it became political, because we didn't want her to be elected, or the committee, the Republicans didn't want her to be elected. That's a Freudian slip there, but I didn't want her to be elected. So I'll be honest, I didn't want her. But that now has led to precedents where is that always going to end? In my opinion, from what you wrote and what I've seen, it now is always going to be hyper-focused. We're never going to be able to branch out and get everybody involved. It's going to be this one, and they're going to get it wrong. They being the investigators are going to get it wrong because they're hyper-focused on one fucking thing. Absolutely.
So that's, politicians, they want a head on a platter, and they want to be the person that brought the head on the platter. And so when Roskin's asking Clinton these questions, you were in charge of foreign policy, right? He's hoping she says, yep, and it's all my fault, because then he gets his name in the news as the guy that brought down Clinton. And so you're doing these windmill swings trying to take out the politician. And so that's why January 6th committee, it focuses just on Trump. Benghazi committee focuses on Clinton. And so my whole point is just running an effective investigation, asking Ben Fishman, who'd you coordinate U.S. foreign policy with in Libya, name some people. And he actually did name people. He volunteered names. You go to the next person on the line. Okay, who'd you report to? And you work your way up that way. And in my opinion, if we, any political investigation, if it's patient, if it's run simply like in a normal investigation, it's going to be much more closer to getting the truth than what we got.
Yeah, it sucks, but it's just like the two-party system, right? It's almost designed this way. It's designed to keep us fighting with each other. It's designed that you have to be fighting for one team or the other team instead of just fighting for the truth. And I don't care what comes out. We just need to get to the bottom of stuff. I mean, I think that's one of the major flaws in our government. And the founders warned against political affiliation and loyalty to parties over loyalty to the country. And that's the position we're in today, is that people are 100% loyal to their party. I mean, the district I'm in, right? I voted for George Santos, the guy who lied about everything. And if we didn't have the two-party system, right, the Republicans would say this is like not an honorable guy. Let's get him out of here. But I understand their argument is like, we need the votes. We can't have another Democrat in there, and Democrats do the same shit. So who cares? But I mean, in a more ideal system, we wouldn't have this. And I know I'm getting political by mentioning that, but I do think that that's the reason we have committees like this. Whereas you said, it's just all about a political football. It's not about honoring the guys who died. It's not about investigating the stuff you have or Sarah Adams has. And it's a shame. It's a shame. It's just stuff to get clicks, stuff to make Congress people elected again and again, so that they could, and this would be a whole nother rabbit hole, but right, so they could engage in insider trading for a few more years, as we talk about on the show all the time. And it's like, there's a lot of flaws in our government. I hate to say it. I mean, it is the greatest country in the world, but there are a hell of a lot of flaws. Yeah,
Afghanistan withdrawal is the latest example of this. So it wasn't investigated when the Democrats were in charge, and now that the Republicans are in charge, rest assured it's going to be investigated. There's going to be hearings on it. But what's that mean? That means already half the country is going to tune out those hearings and just say, "Oh, that's a partisan witch hunt going after Biden." So are we actually going to get any closer to the truth on what happened there? No.
And will from reading and from Benghazi, are they going to go after anybody within DOD or the generals that were involved? That actually, because it is a military drawdown, no, it's probably not going to happen. I mean, I hope it, but no, from experience, it's not. And that's what's, and I love statistics. When I got my graduate degree, that was my favorite subject, was research methods. Crazy, I know, and statistics. So I do like all that. You put the statistics, the probabilities, validity, sample size, and all that. But looking at that, looking at the statistics, how you broke it down, they would have got the answers. They, being the select committee, would have got the answers they were looking for if they would have done that bottom-up method. If they would have done the statistic. In fact, they probably would have uncovered even more. I think that the rabbit hole would even opened more if they would have done that bottom and doing just what you said. And the statistics, I agree. Now, there's always degree statistics based on sample sizes and all that other stuff that goes on there. But in this case, I think it would have. And reading your book actually shows that. I believe it does.
I appreciate that. And so I actually reassembled their information from their transcripts and found out basically Clinton was in charge of Libyan foreign policy. Jake Sullivan wrote the talking points. Military didn't follow its own doctrine. And I found that from their information. And so if they would have been conducting this, thorough investigation the entire time, who knows what could have happened. We would have known for absolutely sure, who was making the decisions to keep the mission compound there when there's so many security threats. Did Clinton truly know about it or not know about it?
And that's where just, I guess, at this point, what should I say it? I'm not going to fucking say it. No, I'm not going to say it. No, I'm not doing that. But are you? The only thing, okay, then this is, and we're getting close to the hour. The only thing that I didn't agree with in the book, the only thing is when I read the first chapter, I read the first chapter, and you said that we were stopped by a roadblock. I was like, that motherfucker is AK-47 fire and RPGs and 50 cal and disc. Does that mean roadblock? So why did you put, we were getting a fire. Why was it? And did somebody say that in report that we were stopped by a roadblock? And if it was, who did it? Because I'm gonna go find it.
So I'm going to look up the specific page reference. So it's almost like we coordinated this. So that chapter you're referring to is I used only congressional documents to talk about what Congress said about the attack.
That's I know I'm busting your balls. That's what I'm like. The next who said that? I want to find out who said that was wrong. But I remember getting questioned about that, and I do remember I did on the. Do I need to get with you offline and find out who's, and I won't come for you. I'm just kidding. All right. Whoever, I'm kidding. I like my life here. I'm relaxed. I'm Clint Eastwood, like an Unforgiven. I just want to farm and be left alone. But I that's one thing about politicians that I don't think they realize even something like that. It hurts. It not just pisses me off. It hurts. Like you're downplaying this. So we're getting shot at. We're throwing 203 rounds downrange. There's rounds snapping by my head. There's rounds that are hitting behind me on this block wall, and you're calling it a roadblock. And that's the problem with DC is that they just feel that it's no big deal. I'm watching it on this drone feed. Well, I watched Chapman. I watched if you watch Roberts Ridge and you watch the CCT that Chapman was his name that got the Medal of Honor. Does it look like much? No, it looks like a bunch of dots moving around. And if you don't know what's going on, you're like, well, what's the big deal? Well, the dude was knifing people, fighting for his life and saving. You can't relate, and don't ever downplay what was going on the ground by a drone feed or by what somebody's telling you and then calling you. And I know I'm like I said, I'm busting your balls. I know you just I read it, I got it, but it's one of those things where it still does hurt, and
certainly. And and how can anyone call this a protest gone awry?
And that's
when you're having a very sophisticated attack. Those guys will line up with mortars on you, like
oh, they were spot on.
Yeah. And so, this is just a mob that got riled up. To me, it blows my mind that the administration went with the narrative for that long. Just talking to you guys, like, no, this was not, a mob out in front of the gates.
Mob out, of course. No, well, I think people will learn a lot from the book. I do, and I do. I think military personnel reading the book will understand, especially the COAs, man, and the troop leading procedures that you broke down in there, which are standard stuff that they didn't follow, and that to me is a cardinal sin right there, because that you always follow your TOPs, and that's how you get that. That's how you get out of situation, and you can fraggle it, you can adjust off it, but you always follow those. And going into a combat situation with one set mind, and this is the way we're going to do it. That is right there. That is going to be a disaster. And
absolutely. Yeah. We teach, you got to have iterative as you get new information and you change the plan. And unfortunately that did not happen. Which is why I think if, you have the investigators, they would have, let's throw a JP50 down in front of Panetta. Why didn't you follow this? Or even explain to me what this is. And my guess is you probably wouldn't get a good answer to that.
Yeah. I want to make sure.
I
don't know. Ask what you were going to ask.
Do you think just because it's because the Congress people don't know what one of those is? They have no idea what they are. Is that why they didn't ask? Because it was out of their wheelhouse?
So I got to be careful. I don't want to, name call anyone here, but I'll just
you don't have to name call. Just say yes or no.
The quality of the questions was dependent on the individual. And as I make the case in my book, your party loyalty came first in terms of your place in the investigation and the questions you're allowed to ask. Subject matter experts, as I also claim in my book, were kind of set off to the side. And so I can absolutely confirm, though, nothing was asked about JP50 or the joint planning process in any of the interviews.
Yeah, that pisses me off. But I know I was already pissed off when I read the book. So it's not that the book. I just like Sons of bitches. That's such easy stuff. All right, sorry, Ian. I'm
No,
getting
no,
off
No,
the-
it's important to get to that because and by the way, we'll say to the people, before we wrap this up, pick up the book, because if you want to hear all the details of everything, you're not going to get it just from this one interview. There's a lot in here. There's a lot of stuff to get into that you cover. But I wanted to make sure I asked this because it's really the one positive. I know that this is like this is a subject that enrages a lot of people. I see it in our comments when we talk about Benghazi. It's always going to enrage a lot of people, including Chris, of course, and including the guys who were there. But I think on a positive note, something that needs to be mentioned is just around the time you're releasing this book, finally, 10 years later, Glenn Doherty, Ty Woods, Sean Smith, and Chris Stevens received the Congressional Gold Medal. Does this feel like some redemption in this story that we've been speaking about for the past decade?
Absolutely. I mean, it took way too long. I actually looked into why didn't it happen sooner, and as the best I could get is it was bipartisan, certainly bipartisan, and Pelosi, when she was speaker, simply didn't pass it for whatever reason. I'm not sure why. But yeah, certainly good news, and it was on an overwhelmingly bipartisan basis.
Yeah,
that these guys were honored with this, and so that is a good news story. And so hopefully, Benghazi, it's going to be studied just like the sinking of the Titanic, just like the Bay of Pigs, just like the Space Shuttle Challenger disaster, without emotion, without fear or favor of political party. Let's figure out what happened with this, and why 4 Americans were killed as a result of this.
I agree, and I think it's going that way too. I really do. And me myself, I don't do the news. They always, and hey, we were a part of that. We were part of that right-wing agenda. And I ain't gonna lie and say we weren't. We were being pissed off and angry and wanted to blame somebody and not really knowing how to handle the situation. But I know myself, I can't speak for the other guys, but pulling myself out of it, and I'm not affiliated with the party anymore. One of the reasons is because of, it's like, fuck both parties. I'm done with y'all both. But it was a learning experience for me, definitely, on how to handle. And I get angry talking to you, but when I get off here, I'm not going to be angry. I'm glad I got the information. I'm glad the more I know, not that it's ever going to bring closure. It doesn't. It's just not. And that's okay. I think it was still one of the greatest nights of my life. I still am so honored that I got to serve that night. But it still helps me learn and know that, you know what? Yeah, maybe they'll never be brought, and we'll never see them in the gallows, and nobody's going to be hanging. We don't get that spectacle that everybody wants, but at least I know that, that somebody was trying to hold somebody responsible, and that there were mistakes made, and here they were, and people are going to know that mistakes were made. And, that's good enough. Honestly, that's good enough for me. And so I appreciate, you digging. I do. I appreciate you putting this out, and I appreciate you breaking it down in a way that a military like myself can. Really, I understood. It made complete sense to me. I was like, I got this. Yeah, that's fucking makes all sorts of sense. I get this. You know what? Trey and I'd say we were friends. He was probably the most friendly to me out of all the. But so to hear that you two, and I get it. I hate that he was stuck in whether stuck in a corner or whether he took on something that he shouldn't, or maybe that he just didn't have the balls to push back. And I don't have a problem saying that. It's still nice to hear that, hey, you know what? You guys worked it out.
Yeah. And I have nothing against Trey Gowdy.
And that's cool, because that's an example. That's a good example of how to adult that we don't know how to do it.
Yeah, hopefully we'll have adults with future investigations.
So, yeah, brother, I hope so too. But Ian will have to tell me about it, because I don't even watch the news anymore. I have no idea what's going on in the world until Ian tells me anymore. I'm kind of, ignorance is truly bliss. But your future, but I know we're running long, but got this book's coming out. A book will be out by the time this comes out. What are you doing? What are you going now? What's the next step?
So I will, be talking about this in various places. Hopefully, I haven't talked to Sarah about this, but hopefully there's going to be a follow-up book to this. So we're going to join forces. I'm going to join forces with some of the staffers, with a news correspondent, with Ethan Churin, and we're going to, put all of our facts together and tell people honestly what happened with Benghazi attack. Right now we have Sarah Adams has her piece with Al Qaeda. Ethan Turn has his piece with the history and how this actually dates back to George W. Bush administration. I have my stuff. So we're going to, lay it all out for this is exactly what happened in Libya. So that's going to be the next step is another book.
That's as long as it just keeps and it still honors the guys. If I could anything can ask from all three, honor the guys. And you're in Sarah's book. To me, we're pretty apolitical. Tell Ethan. I know you can tell by the book he loves Hillary Clinton. Will you tell him to knock it off? Just be right. Come on, man. You got to get information, and that's just for me reading. Because I did read it. You guys, honestly, it was. Here are the facts. This was like, we know she's not the complete person at fault, but she did have responsibility. So come on, Ethan, let's get into that. And so if you can tell him that for me, I would really appreciate that.
Absolutely. So he is very much on board with the why was it blamed on the video narrative.
Good.
So
it's good. I'm holding you accountable to keep him in line and just to make it yeah, guys, I really appreciate you coming on and talking about this and allow me to bust your balls a little bit, but that's what I did.
I'm going to get you that footnote for the roadblock.
Yeah, dude. Oh, please. Yeah, please do. I'd love to find who said that, who the congressman said it was a roadblock. Yeah. No more roadblocks.
You know what I wanted to ask you though is just in terms of people picking up the book, because I know a lot of people are going to hear this, they're going to want to pick it up. At least for now, like I just know you on Twitter and like the Amazon link, it doesn't go to, at least for now, it wasn't going directly to the book, or there were some pricing things. Is it when people hear this on Monday, will they be able to look up Brad Podliska Fire Alarm and it'll be available?
Yeah. So certainly the Kindle edition will be available, and I'm told the hard copy. Now, with that said, this is a textbook, and anyone that's been in college knows that textbooks are badly overpriced. So as a disclaimer, I have nothing to do with the price of this thing.
Because I did see it's about $100, right?
Yeah, which is the textbook market, because the way the model
which is
works.
True. I was thinking the same thing. I mean, any of us who have gone to college and picked up a textbook, that's not out of the ordinary. It's a textbook.
That's the expectation. Yeah. And, I remember back in the day, I'm like spending $400 in textbooks is ridiculous. So I apologize. I have nothing to do with that. The Kindle edition is a lot cheaper. And I can get people, I think 25% off if they want to contact me.
Awesome. That's good.
So I can get people a discount. But I apologize for the price. I promise the subsequent book that's going to be coming out will be much more reasonably priced.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I mean, I could just tell you for me, I don't know about Chris, like if part of it for me, I spend just like everybody way too much screen time. So I hate reading books on a screen. I like having a hard guy. I like having my JT Patton Whispers of a Gypsy, soft cover. Because we're constantly just texting. And if I'm looking at something on a screen, I'm gonna be distracted by a million other things. That's even why when I go to the gym, I'm one of the few people I have it in front of me. I didn't realize I still have the old school little iPod so that I'm not getting texts, so that I'm not, because Chris and I are kind of similar in this sense. Like Chris and I are not on our phones 24/7 answering everybody immediately. And I kind of like that. I think I will get back to everybody within 24 hours or so. But yeah, that's why. But I know for a lot of people, they do read books on Kindle. So for a lot of people, it will be actually the more, what's the word I'm looking for? The more
preferred,
accessible.
Accessible. But I don't know what word I'm.
I have no fucking idea what you're saying.
But anyway, it'll be like the easier way for people to read it, the more accessible version, as you would say. So yeah, I think people like it. So once again, it's Fire Alarm, and Brad's very active on Twitter. So at Bradley Podliska on Twitter, Bradley Podliska. And it's been great having you on, because I think this is an important topic for the audience. The audience loves hearing about what went on in Benghazi. The only thing I always say to the audience is I think Chris feels the same. Sometimes the anger overtakes people, and I don't ever want people to hear this podcast and be like, man, this ruined my day. And sometimes you hear that, and it's like, I think it's just important to get to the bottom of the stuff, to honor these guys, and sometimes to let that anger go, because even the most recent thing, which was a piece of good news, these guys are finally getting the Congressional Gold Medal. Somehow the responses we'll get are, I'm pissed. And it's like, this is not really the time to be pissed. This is a positive to a very horrible incident, right? So that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, and the truth is coming out. Sarah Adams, Ethan, and I, we're getting the truth out there. So people just be patient a little bit longer. We'll get you the true story.
Oh, well, you're busting Ethan's balls about what I told you. Also bust Sarah's balls for only attending 5 meetings. Why the hell she that lazy ass? All right, because I read that, I was like, sir, when I talk to her again, you only attended 5 meetings. You shithead. But no, Sarah's probably one of the best targeters I ever worked with. Highly respect her, and I'll be honest, if she would have been there that night instead of going to Germany to have dinner or whatever the hell she went, I know she would have picked up a gun and probably been shooting with us. So yeah, she's pretty tough. So, but Brad, God bless you, man, and Yeah, send me that footnote. I will love to know who. But in the meantime, just keep doing what you're doing, and just keep those parameter right and left limits, and stay down the road, man. Stay right in the limit, and just get the truth out how it is. And if people accept it, fine. If they don't, but just the facts, man. Just the facts, and let's find out what happened, man, and get it out there.
Yeah, I appreciate it. It's been an honor to talk to you. As I said before, what you guys did in Libya, I mean, that's the American spirit. You guys weren't, waiting around for, the government bureaucrats to help rescue you guys. You guys stuck together as a group. You guys fought back. And in the end, you guys, showed what America's all about.
Thank you.
And so that's why it's been an honor to speak to you. And Ian, it's been an honor to speak to you as well.
Thanks.
And so
you as well.
Brad, that means a lot, man. Thanks, buddy. I really appreciate that. And I just had lucky to be with a bunch of heroes that night. That's just all it was. So thank you.
Yeah, you guys were the heroes. There were no heroes in Washington. They were in Liberty. So.
And I won't disagree with you on that one. And that's about all I'm going to say about that right now. We'll get you on next time when you got the next book out. Okay, buddy.
Okay, great. Yeah,
right,
thanks.
buddy.
That's all for this episode of the Battle Line Podcast. But we'll be back on Monday with more American Straight Talk. Until then, be sure to follow us on Instagram at Battleline Podcast and on Twitter at Battleline Pod. To sign up for future Battleline tactical courses, go to www.christantoparanto.net. Believe in yourself, face all challenges head on, and as always, never quit.